What's up, gaggers? Before getting into the interview portion, I just wanted to start this video by saying that I have also released a video on my three main criticisms of Gamin4Hope. Each one was mentioned in this interview, and with those responses, I was able to glean more into how he feels about certain things he's done in the past, as well as how he plans to move forward. In the description down below, I have Gamin4Hope's socials so you can follow him on his various platforms, and I've also included the link to my aforementioned video. Throughout the interview, Gamin4Hope was nothing but kind and respectful to me, and I just wanted to say that I'm appreciative of that. When I asked if he'd do an interview, I explicitly let him know my video would skew negatively, yet he accepted anyway. For that, I'd like to thank Gamin4Hope publicly for coming on the channel. A brief note I need to make is that later on in the video, I have spliced in an editor's note that goes over him saying he will donate to make up for my outrageous generosity criticism. You'll understand this point more if you watch my video and when you get to that question in this interview, but when I was reviewing his use of the outrageous generosity tag after the interview, I found it didn't just span from April 2022 to July 2022, it actually lasted into September of 2022, at least as far as I know. What he decides to do with that information is on him, but for now I'll end this bit off by saying I would appreciate it if you'd like, comment, and subscribe, and I hope you enjoy the interview. If you want, we can get right into it. Is that cool?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, and however you choose to. So the way that I'm looking at this, and you can put this in there or whatever. The way I'm looking at this whole interview, it's your content. I'm just here to help you in any way that I can, answering questions. We'll get into this in more nuance in a minute, but the way that I look at this kind of stuff is people will think about you what they want to think about you, and there's very little you can do to change it. You can jump in front of things, which is, again, we'll get into that. And there's some value in that, but generally speaking, there's very little you can do to convince people to like you. So I'm not as concerned about um, how you creatively put this together, because if I know you're not doing this out of bad intent, um, and if other people choose to see how you edited the video that way or whatever, because I've created content for 7 years, it's like I know what people do, what they read into too much. So, but yeah, go ahead and jump right in, man. Whenever you're ready, I'm ready to fire up and ready to rock and roll. And I'll just roll with whatever like follow up questions you have, even if they weren't on the list. It doesn't matter. The only reason I wanted the list was just to get a general gauge of like where we were going and what kind of your thoughts were and what you were going to want to talk about. So I had my mind in the right headspace. That was pretty
Yeah.
much it.
Yeah,
So,
sounds good. And I know a lot of them are skewed negatively. So again, if you want to skip anything, that's fine. Um,
yeah, yeah.
a random question I thought of recently before getting in this call that I didn't send to you. Uh, I also play Overwatch. I'm unfortunately a Mercy one trick. Okay, I'm one of them. Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, I know. It's bad. It's trash. That's why. If you look at the questions I sent you, there's no questions about Overwatch because, I'm not a good player. Okay. But anyway, I just wanted to ask, how do you feel about the Nerf Reinhardt movement?
Oh gosh, I don't even know if I know what that is. Oddly enough, I've does he really need nerfs? Oh,
uh, See, it's a movement I'm starting. As a Mercy player,
oh,
I fly
okay.
around, and sometimes he pulls me from quite a far distance whenever he's sliding into me. And also, whenever he hammers down, I'll be flying, and then I get hit with it. Do you think he needs
I
Nerf
can honestly
now?
say I
Did I
didn't know that.
convince you?
I can honestly say Reinhardt needs more buffs than nerfs, so I don't know.
Okay,
Maybe
okay.
specific to Mercy, there could be an engagement change, but I don't know.
All right. Okay, so getting to the first questions that I have for you. Will a series like the journey to becoming a professional Overwatch 2 player ever happen again? In other words, a series of short form content that spans multiple days to even years.
That's a great question. I think that I've thought about this a lot, especially with all the stuff coming up lately and a lot of the hatred spiking and that kind of stuff. I really think that I love the idea of the series because the series itself is unique, but this a series like it, possibly 100%. I would never rule it out completely, but I have more recently decided that my original goal was to compete in the what was originally actually when I started this was the Overwatch League, and then rest in peace, it fell apart. And then when the OWCS emerged, I just shifted my verbiage to incorporate it into that. And my goal the whole time was to compete in 2026. I started in 2023. And I have realized that for a whole multitude of reasons, the tier one, whether that's Overwatch League or OWCS, I think that echelon of play was a wonderful goal, but I have failed to achieve it, and I'm comfortable with that. I don't mind failure. Failure is just a byproduct of learning. And I definitely don't see me pushing towards a tier one esport in general, but I do love the grind of pushing for the upper echelon, like for Overwatch, that might be your top 500 players. And I do believe I'm capable of doing that. I just think that the gap between that goal and tier one Overwatch, for example, is so large that I don't see myself setting another one, even in another game, or even trying to return back to this one. I think it'll just adjust to what I think is more appropriate for where I'm at.
Okay, I see. And you said top 500. Are you saying top 500 tanks or just players in general?
Top 500 tanks. Yeah, it's possible that I might grind out DPS or support, but I kind of am of the belief that if you can get to a certain rank on any of the roles, that means you have that rank's understanding of the game, but you have it from one angle, right? You have three different angles. You have tank, support, DPS, and I believe that can carry over to the other roles. I think that's something that I have struggled with for a while because I've actually, while I peaked Masters 5 on support, it was during rank inflation. I no longer consider that my peak, even though on paper it is. I would say I probably am a solid mid diamond support player. If I were to go back and grind it again, I'd probably hit that. So to what I just said, the fact that tank is still in like upper plat has been driving me nuts because I figured I could just make that shift. But tank is proving to be a very different role, obviously, than support, but just more different than what I anticipated it being. So, but yeah, to answer the specific question, top 500 tank for sure.
All right. I guess going back to the short form content thing and making a series, where did you find the motivation to do it the first time? Because I went through your whole catalog of TikTok and I noticed that there there were some breaks, but for the most part, it was like daily you were doing it for a very long time. So where did you find that motivation at?
Well, I got to say the inspiration first because that'll add some light to the motivation as well. The inspiration for it, I've referenced like maybe a handful of times, and it might have been in the short form originally. I don't know. There was a guy named Jordan on TikTok, and he may have posted on other platforms, but I found him on TikTok, and he was documenting his journey, if you will, of taking an ice bath every single day. And I found it fascinating because you go from day one where he was terrified, petrified, would not even get in the water, and then he finally just plunges, right? And then he starts talking about the effects and what he's experienced, not just then, but over the course of the next every day, right? From there forward. And I thought, that'd be really cool. I've been creating at that point, it was May of 20, it might have been April of 23. I had been playing Overwatch after leaving Apex Legends because I felt like Apex was in a dry state back in November of 22. And I was like, man, my content's really not standing out. I got to find something that makes it unique. So I had started to brainstorm. I was out for a walk with my wife, and I was like, what if I found a way to like document something, like document a crazy idea on a daily basis? It would create content in and of itself. It could be a repeatable but not repetitive format. I'm like, I can see this working. And the way that I kept it going for so long is that I'm a very big believer in that I am responsible for my own success. And at the moment that I choose to stop or quit something, I have admitted defeat, and I need to know why. There needs to be a clear reason why I'm admitting defeat. I'll use the OWCS/Overwatch League as for instance. I knew, like I explained, that my goal was set for 2026. I figured, 2.5, 3 years. If I can't do it in that length of time, I shouldn't be doing it because at that point I'm pushing 30. And realistically, it was already a stretch in my late 20s. So I knew that in my head. And as soon as I got close enough, and then I just took this 9 to 5 recently that is taking up a lot more of my time, I realized I was like, you know what? I got to admit defeat here, because if I keep doing this, I won't see my kids, and that's way more important to me. So that was it. So it's just that kind of stuff. So I stayed motivated because I believe that discipline is more important than motivation. There were days I didn't feel like it, for sure. There were several days I didn't feel like it, but I just kind of told myself, you got to kick yourself in the ass and get up and do it. It doesn't matter what it looks like. You got to do your best. And the whole, whether you like or hate the guy, David Goggins, the whole meme about who's going to carry the boats and the logs, that whole thing. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but basically, the idea is who's going to be the man enough for you when people need you the most. And if you can't be there for yourself, you're not going to be there for anybody else. Um, so discipline is a really big part of my life, and I'm not always the greatest at it. It's an ongoing learning process, but that is how I continue to push through every single day.
So now getting into what people will probably be watching for recent events. So my
Sure.
first question is, when it comes to the recent events, have you seen growth in any or all of your channels?
Immensely, yeah, unequivocally, yes. Just as a easy, for instance, I went from averaging just on Twitch. I multi-stream from Twitch, or excuse me, I multi-stream to Twitch and YouTube. And just on Twitch alone, my average viewership in the month of May, I looked maybe yesterday or the day before. The average viewership in the month of May was right around the upper 20s, maybe lower 30s. I can't remember exactly. And this month, it's over 120. So I have literally quadrupled in the course of 30 days. And yeah, that's been a ride in and of itself. But yes, 100%. And that's just one metric. That there's countless others I could point to, but yes.
Do you think the growth has been necessarily a net positive for your content creation career?
I think so. I had to chew on that for a bit, because for the first couple of days post drama is what I've kind of termed it. It was awful. Um, I had some of the highest viewership I've ever had, in the 300 and 400 range. And the problem was, at the very beginning, I'd say for the first 2 or 3 streams, it was probably 70 to 80% toxicity. It wasn't just people who were watching. It was people who came in to rage bait or disguise well-meaning messages as what that were really just rage bait. It was a lot of rage bait, and I knew it, so I just didn't respond. I just kept going. That first stream I came back. I've had, just as a side note, I've had the same 3 moderators, including my wife, for the rest of my time as a content creator. My best friend, another guy that I met through the space, and my wife were my 3 moderators across Discord, Twitch, and YouTube. I never needed them. I never needed them. The rare times I had problems, I could handle it. I ended up getting, I think, I forget how many more we added. I know for sure at least 3. Oh, there's 4. There's at least 4 that I can think of off the top of my head that they'd been a part of the community forever and it offered. So I decided to throw some mod swords at them, and they've done a phenomenal job learning and figuring it out with me, because none of us know what the heck to do now. But those first 2 or 3 days were brutal, um, as far as the net positive versus a net negative. But on the other side of those first 2 or 3 days, basically once the no lifing the internet folks left the stream, what I was left with was people who originally found, whether it was my video that I posted that was in response to a Ply when he made his video, kind of reacting to me as a creator, I guess is kind of how I would term it. And then he did a VOD review of my Doomfist at the end of it as well, which is a travesty in and of itself. But I after I made my video on it and responding to every single allocation I've had in the last like 6 months, that video went wildly above my normal performance levels. And when that brought in more people, there was a lot of negativity at first, but then the positives started to settle in. And what I was left with people who were, either they came in because of the chapters, which oddly, I thought that was kind of funny when people pointed out the chapters of that video on its own looked a little sus. That was funny. I have to give them that. I'm like, no, I'm going to leave them because they're there for a reason and they are named for a reason. But that is funny. Um, and but there are people, and I got a comment today. Not even joking. Today, I got a comment. There was another one that sounded just like this. Was strongly the effect of, I saw this post on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. I saw a post making fun of you or whatever, and then I came here intending to make fun of you, and I stayed because you seem like a pretty reasonable guy. I don't know why everybody hates you so much. And those people are who I still have. I'm still, post the influx of the drama, I'm still averaging over 120 to 100, and actually it's been closer to 200 some nights, just on Twitch. And those people, I'm sure, where I said it was probably 70 to 80% were negative before, it is completely the other way now. It's 70 to 80% of people are either constructively criticizing or they're just there to enjoy themselves. So, I know it's a longer answer, but I think it's really important to provide the context to the idea that yes, it's been a positive, but it took a couple days for that to level out.
I guess towards the negativity you've got, have you been taking care to make sure to not like get bogged down in all that negativity that's been surrounding you lately? Because even today you're still dealing with it to a lesser degree than before, but you still are. How's that been like? Have you been able to not get bogged down?
Yeah, I mean, so the first 2 or 3 days, like I said, were the toughest. There was a lot of negative emotions I was dealing with that day. But like I kind of alluded to earlier when we were talking about the importance of discipline, the way I look at it is when I have negative emotions in regard to my content, that typically means that there is something that either I'm missing or something that someone else is missing. And if I've done everything I can to provide the context for what they are missing, and I'm not missing anything, then I don't have any right to be depressed about it, is the way that I look at it. I know that's not everybody's way of handling things. What I have done to make sure that I don't get to those rock bottom places is I am married. Most people know that by now. My bride is a absolutely wonderful woman who has supported me through more things than I would care to admit. And she is my rock. Like I can be going through, I can be having one of the worst days in my life, and we've been through a lot worse than the internet crap. And she just looks at me and she says, "I love you," and everything goes away. And it might sound gushy and like, "Oh, it's so sweet," but it's so serious. Like it's that, and I won't go into this part too much because I know it's not everybody's thing. But my faith in Christ, that's a very big thing for my life too. Between my wife and that faith that I have in Christ, those two things keep me grounded consistently when things go sideways. And yeah, that's so. Yes, to answer your question directly, I have been doing my very best to take care of myself, and sometimes that does look like taking a break. That's still a reasonable response. You just have to, again, I have to answer my question of why I'm doing that. Then if I know clearly why I'm taking a break, then just take a break.
Kind of a follow up to that, indirectly maybe. Do you think that you've become bitter or toxic lately?
I think that's a healthy question to ask. I will say I have done my very best not to be. I have been told by people who have been in my community for a while that they see me shifting that way. And what I have challenged them to show me, it's not that I'm being arrogant and like, oh, there's no way you're right. Find the clip. If I'm being that way, I'm not aware of it. And the only way I become aware of it is if someone shows me or tells me or gives me a for instance so that I can actually be aware of it. It's just like anything else in life. If you're, uh, I don't know a great example to use here that would make sense for a whole majority, but if there's a way that your friend is communicating to you, and to them it's normal, maybe it's a word they use, right? It's a totally normal word for them to use, and you never tell them that word bothers you, and it's totally normal to them. They're never going to be able to fix it in the context of your relationship. In the context of the internet, for me, coming back to the actual specifics here, I think when people have pointed at things, because I've asked a few to, hey, can you send me a clip? Hey, can you give me a for instance? And some of them do. And most of the time, I have not found one so far that wasn't in this particular category that I'm going to share. And I think this is what I see a lot of people perceiving that way. Um, I have stopped giving a fuck. I'm over it. Um, I I care about people. I could care less what people think. And I am so over constantly feeling like I have to defend myself and defend the game I'm playing. I'm just over it. So my responses now, instead of just, I hope you have a good day, which is what I used to do. Now, 9 times out of 10, it's to block the account or hide them from the YouTube channel. And apparently that is considered to be bitter and toxic. And on the live streams, I'm getting more witty. I posted a clip recently, like last couple of days, where someone said that I think it was my cholesterol is higher than my rank or something like that. And I have to admit, it was at least clever. They're bringing health into Overwatch. Okay, I see what they're doing here. And I just snapped back with, well, your IQ is lower than the age of your account. So, and it was a brand new account for context. So it was like that in and of itself. I had a few people reach out to me and like, hey, I don't know if that was a good call. I'm like, it's witticism. If people can't take a joke like that, I mean, he takes a dig, I'm going to take a dig back, and I'm going to do it in a way that's meant to be a joke. If he takes it personally, he or she or whatever, whoever they are, takes it personally, that's on them. If they're going to dish it out, they need to be able to take it too. Um, so that's kind of. I think it's really just those two things: the fact that I hide, mute, block, whatever you want to call it, depending on the platform, people that are being outright toxic or rage baiting. I don't have a problem with people disagreeing with me in the comment section. That's fine. That's just the internet. You can't get over that. But I do have a problem with people being outright toxic in their responses. And that's from all sides. I blocked someone today. And I really think it's important to say. I hid someone on my YouTube channel today who attacked this person claimed to be a Christian. And from what they said, they probably are. But they went after some of my specific nuanced ways of handling things in the public sphere regarding people who disagree with Christianity. And maybe the classic example is the LGBTQIA plus Christian conflict. I handle it in a very neutral stance. I have my own personal beliefs, but I try to bridge the gap between so do the folks that are members of the LGBT community. I have nothing but respect for you, even if we don't agree with each other. That's how society should work. Even if you don't agree, we need to be respectful towards one another. And this individual basically said that I was being a pansy and not standing up for what's right. I hit him too. This isn't a partisan issue. This is if you're gonna be a toxic prick in my comments or rage bait, you're out. I don't deal with it. Um, and I think that's also being perceived that way. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, obviously, I've had to do it too, even though I'm a way smaller channel, hiding people, things of that nature. I mean, that
Oh
comes with
yeah.
the territory, right? It comes with the territory. Some people go too far, some people maybe you don't like it, but you still keep them anyway. I don't think that's
Yep.
bitter or toxic. I wouldn't use that language, but my question was actually specific to the example you gave earlier, the TikTok that you post, well, short form content. I'm sure you post on YouTube too, about like the cholesterol than the IQ. Um, I agree that it's witty, and I obviously watched it and I was like, I get what he's doing. But I don't know if you saw the comments on that TikTok, but a lot of them were. I don't want to say they were offended, but they were criticizing you by saying like, "Wow, that's a good one," things like that, because obviously sentiment online is against you, obviously. And I guess a follow up to that would be, do you think that making content like that or saying things like that witticism you said is potentially making your circumstances worse on the internet?
I mean, it could, but also saying nothing can too. And I think that's the unfortunate part of doing this. These decisions can be really tricky because doing and saying nothing, you just get walked all over. It never ends. I promise you. Like a lot of people, it's the classic when you get bullied, just walk away. They don't stop until you put a stop to it, and that how you put a stop to bullying is very nuanced, so we aren't going to go there. You could do a lot of different things there, but doing nothing doesn't typically work. And while there are some times where it does work, there was a lot of those kinds of comments that night. So I was just kind of like, well, I'm just going to respond to one and I'll clip it because it's funny and moved on. If, if it's a net negative to some people, that my content's not for them. And that's okay. I've always been okay with the fact that my content's not for everybody. I think if somebody, and this is a very controversial person, so I'm going to put that out there in bold letters, Matt Rife, if you're familiar with his comedy. Um, he's a stand-up comedian who does a lot of crowd work and has zero filter. He does not care about being politically correct. He does not care about what people think about him. And I think that's part of why I like his comedy so much, is because he just doesn't care. He will go for the throat and he will make the most edgy jokes he possibly can in the presence of someone who would probably be offended. And what's amazing is 9 times I don't think I've seen one video where he said a joke that was about a particular group of people that was happened to be in his audience where they got offended. Most of them are laughing about it. And I think that's what's important here, especially in the context of that particular clip. It's comedy. Comedy is meant to push past the boundaries of what we perceive to be like correct, right? That's comedy helps us deal with what life, the difficulties and negatives in life, and do it in a healthy way. And my humor, my sense of humor is very dark. It just is. I don't do that on the internet because again, people way take that out of context very quickly. But I do have a very, very twisted sense of humor, and it helps me deal with life as it comes. When things happen, when crap hits the fan, I laugh through it because that's the way that I've always dealt with things. So coming back to the original question of do I think it's a net positive or a net negative? I'm not sure that I know the answer to that. I don't. But if it's a net negative, if someone really sees that clip and says, "Oh, I don't want to watch Gamin4Hope anymore. He's gotten toxic." If that one clip says that my rest of my character as a person is now toxic because of one clip, that says more about them than me. Because I don't, those kinds of things don't happen commonly. They don't, and that's part of why people notice them. Is because I don't do that very often. It's very rare, and it's usually after I've just been fed up in the moment. Um, so I don't know. I don't know that I don't know whether it's a net negative or a net positive. To be honest, I don't know that answer directly, but I do know that if people don't enjoy that part of what I do, that's okay. They don't have to watch my content. That won't offend me. It's okay.
So I guess moving on from maybe that and going on to, I guess, content creators as a whole. Uh, have you seen some of the coverage from other content creators that started after your most recent video addressing the claims and allegations made against you?
No, I don't watch it. I doesn't show up on my homepage or for you page or anything. The only things that I'm aware of that people have made of me are the ones I specifically addressed in that video. Addressing the allegations video or accusations. I can't remember how I titled it, but that video. And then I've heard there's a scratch and sniff meme about me now, which is interesting. Apparently, someone clipped me adjusting in my chair and then smoothing out my mustache, which is what actually happened, and said, "Oh, he scratched his balls and sniffed it." I'm like, okay. I just like whatever you guys want to think, man. I don't even know what to say to that one. That's wild. So, and that one's more of a meme, I think. But if people take it seriously and get offended, man, that's their problem. I don't care.
Yeah. I've
But
because I recently did all of my research on your TikTok. I know the content creator you're talking about. I was talking more of like maybe more reputable, but you answered that question. So yeah, I think that's like more of a detractor channel. That's has
yeah,
you in it
constantly that
in
way.
its
Let me
crosshairs.
ask you,
Yeah.
if you don't mind, can I flip the script here and ask you a question? Is
Yeah,
it okay?
sure. Absolutely.
So, who have you seen make content? If you're willing, you don't have to put this in the video one way or the other. This is just me asking you a question. I'm curious who you've seen.
Yeah. So in my, I guess, like personal life, I like to watch. Okay, uh, not endorsing completely here. These people are pretty maybe crass, you could say. They use language that I wouldn't necessarily fully agree with. Just throwing that out there. But
Fair enough.
okay, so I've seen coverage naturally from a streamer known as Chud Logic. He used to be in odd name, but he used to be in like the political sphere, and now he does a lot of commentary. He still does political stuff too. And then I don't necessarily watch him always, but I actually watched a video from Harmful Opinions. He's also commentary. These are commentary channels. I know you're obviously more you're fully into Overwatch. I also play Overwatch. I even have content on my channel that is Overwatch. But
Yeah, I saw some of that. Yeah.
yeah, but it's just like I like to watch commentary just in general, and my channel is kind of like a mix of both. But those are the two people who I saw, and some of these questions, especially coming up, actually stem from their coverage, and obviously the sentiment from their chats, their comment sections as well. So that's why that's how I curated this whole list of questions.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So you might not want to watch their coverage, but
Oh,
yeah,
I don't care what people think. I don't watch that stuff. I'm not going to feed them the ad revenue.
yeah. Okay, so I remember seeing in your content how you at some point wanted to do acts of outrageous generosity, but I know that throughout your career as a content creator, you've had financial struggles. Were you ever able to do any acts of outrageous generosity?
Yes, 100%. Now, am I willing to give specific examples? No, and that may look like I'm lying to you guys, and that's fine. But the way that I look at outrageous generosity is I keep that between my wife and I. We do those things privately. They aren't meant to be in the public eye because it's not for public attention. It's meant to be doing the right thing at the right time with the right circumstances, right? So if I know of somebody that has a need and we have a way to fill that need, we fill the need and we don't say anything about it. It's not something that we don't want to be braggadocious in the sense of what we're doing to help other people. The exception to that is whenever we've done fundraisers in the past where I ended up being the initial point that the money touched because there's an accountability need there. I'll use a very specific example. This is an old one. I doubt anybody even knows about this one. It's that old. This might even have been in my first year. I know for sure it wasn't beyond my second year of streaming. It was my first year. And now that I think about it, I know for a fact it was my first year. I got affiliated on Twitch. It's my first meaningful any opportunity to make revenue from doing what I did. And I had a bunch of people like I don't even know if it was gifting subs or because I don't even remember if that was a thing then, but it was subs and people sending tips and stuff. And I decided with my first month of revenue, I'm like, I want to do something nice for my community locally. I have a lot of this is my personal life. I'm going to put that disclaimer out there. I have family who are in law enforcement, and I know how hard their job is, regardless of all of the political turmoil around that. I don't think anybody can argue the fact that their job is brutal. There's really not there's not much getting around that. And I want to do something nice for them. So we did something called Donuts for Cops, kind of a fun play on at the time, Gamin4God, which was my original name. And what we did is I said, hey, I will buy however much. I can't remember if I decided to match it or if we were just going to use the revenue. That part I won't speak to because I don't remember that for sure. But I will say with confidence that it was based on the money I made from Twitch that month. I was going to go buy donuts and coffee for cops and just drop it off one morning. I don't remember if I posted to social media or if I just streamed it to my stream at the time, honestly, but I remember saying, hey, here's my proof. There's literally donuts. There's literally coffee. And I was literally standing in the police station. Like it was all there because they sent money knowing that's where it was going. So I wanted to make sure that if I'm saying to them, I'm going to spend the money that you're sending me to hang on to for a second on this purpose, they need to know that it went there. Period. End of story. Because the moment that you have the question in someone's mind of, is he actually spending the money on what he says he's spending it on? That's a problem. Because you don't ever want to get to that point where your viewers can't trust you. So my community knew at the time, and that was that. Any other stuff like that that was like fundraising for other causes or purposes was done, and money went straight to them. I never touched it. That was about the only time I can think of where it was a nuanced, we were doing generous things, but it was using me as a vehicle, if you will, for that money to get where it needed to go. And I never wanted to be the guy that was like, hey, we donated all that money, where did it go? So that's, yeah. So hopefully that answers your question, but yes. And there is some plan now that I have a 9 to 5. We were paying our bills before. Our bills were paid largely and thanks to the community, but we also had some things I was doing outside of content that I just didn't talk about because not everybody has to know everything I'm doing all the time. All of our bills were paid, and I now with this job, we just have additional revenue. So my hope is to over the next one of my goals as a creator has been to somewhat regularly, whether that's like once every 3 months, once every 2 months, I haven't really decided, as frequently as is as feasibly possible. I'd like to do an actual fundraiser stream for an organization, a 501c3, again, something that doesn't go through me at all. It goes straight to the organization. St. Jude is one. There's one that I've worked with in the past called Stack Up. They're an organization for veterans. It uses gaming as a way to help veterans deal with all the things they deal with when they come home from war, PTSD, what have you. And I'm very passionate about veterans. I think they are some of the most wonderful people, but they just aren't. I don't think anybody really knows how to engage with them, and they don't know how to engage with others either. It's not just one sided. It's both sides. Um, and so I always really loved really good veterans organizations like Stack Up. And yeah, I want to do something like that more regularly because now there's no constant need for finances on our end. So I don't need to be feeling like I'm pulling from that or maybe confusing people because I've been asking for money, but now I'm sending money to other people. It just adds confusion. So but now that I have that 9 to 5 and I can confidently say I could even contribute to those kinds of things, I just think it would be the right time to really activate that in a public light too. I hope that makes sense. It was a very long answer to a relatively simple question, but I think it was really important to get the nuance in there.
Yeah, I kind of want to touch on that after this next question. I Going back to the harmful opinions topic, he made a video about you being a grifter. So I actually want to, and then the Chud Logic person criticized you, made fun of you for uh, uh, e-begging. Okay, so I guess my first question to all this is, okay, you have done multiple campaigns to raise money from your audience, asking for thousands of dollars across multiple of them. What would you say to those who claim that you e-beg?
They're welcome to think that. That's the very first thing I would say. The second thing I would say, anybody that has watched any of my live streams at the very beginning would know that when I've done these things, they were an extension of what we call the mantra in our community. I call it that. I don't know that anybody else has called it that. Let's be fair. But the thing that I say at the beginning of every single stream is that life is difficult. Don't do it alone. We have it on a t-shirt. It's literally a big deal. The things that I say after that, I say everybody in this community aligns on that, regardless of our individual differences and beliefs. We all agree that life is way too difficult to do alone. My personal encouragement is 3 parts. I won't go into the first two as much because they aren't as relevant, whatever the word is, to your question. But I want to make sure they're in here because it'll make more sense in context. My 3 things I recommend to them is to find Christ because of my faith, find friendship, and find community in that order. And I tell them this is because when life hits the fan, you can go through these 3 pillars and you're less likely to spin out of control in your life. But the community one, I go into a very specific part where I say it is more community is there for when you need practical help at a large scale. Maybe you need your rent paid. Maybe you need food on the table. Maybe you've just lost your job and you're really trying to scramble and figure out what to do for the next 3 days so you can get yourself on your feet. That is where community comes in. And community looks different depending on who you are. For me, I'm a Christian. I belong to a church locally. That's where I go first. If there's anything that's gone wrong in my life, I reach out to my local church because I'm involved with them. I serve in their church. I've tithed to the church. Like these things are all part of my life, but not everybody's a Christian. I know that. So what does community look like for others? Well, sometimes that's your neighbors. It's less commonly that these days because like your neighbor knocks on your door, you think you did something wrong these days. It's not usually because you need like some salt, right? Like you could like 40 years ago. But community, I think, in the modern context, is best exemplified in most people's minds when there's a natural disaster. Think like Hurricane Katrina, um, any of the recent, well, hurricanes are a big one, really nasty tornado systems, right? That knock out towns, that take out buildings, that like, and the surrounding communities that weren't affected come in to help their neighbors because it's the right thing to do. It's community, it's taking care of each other. No one's asking for money. The people showing up are not typically like, all right, I need money to help cover my diesel I just drove here. They just came to help. And because there's so many people, it cost each person 30 or 40 bucks to drive in this, maybe not literally, but stick with me in the concept here. And there were, 1,000 people who came out. When you realize that 1,000 people came out, they may have spent $40 to $50 in fuel getting to and from their location. It's 50 grand. It's a lot of money. That's a huge amount of money. But because that many people just took it upon themselves to help out, no one thought of it because it didn't hurt them as much. If you go to your two or three closest friends, on the other hand, after a hurricane, you say, "Hey, can you come help my city? We need like 50 grand in help." And your two or three friends are like, "Man, if I was a millionaire, I'd do it in a heartbeat, but I'll help you because I like you. Like, what, what can I do for you? I can't do anything like that." Right. So, coming back to the context of the e-begging, I've heard that it's not as common. That's why I haven't really addressed it. But it is definitely not e-begging. Even during that week, there were additional incentives on my live streams. It wasn't just, please give me money or I'm going to fall apart. It was like, hey, if you send or ship support in this amount of money, this thing happens on stream. I took hot sauce shots on stream at one point. I had a Bob Ross wig. I was gonna do a Bob Ross painting stream at a certain point. Like this was all like think of like what most streamers do as a normal fundraiser for another company, but it was for me and it was very openly for what we were doing. And it was specific. It was always this is what we are doing with the money. Every single person who's ever contributed to me financially in any of those times, if they have ever asked, and if they ever do ask, hey, where'd that money go? I can give them a receipt. They'll know. Hey, this is the exact dollar amount that I received from all of this. Here's your receipt. Because I don't have anything to hide. I don't care. What I won't do, on the other hand, is post it on the internet because I don't see a reason for that. Because if the internet wants to be critical of it from a distance, they're welcome to. The people that actually poured out financially to help are the ones that I think are owed that receipt because they literally took money out of their pockets to do it. They have every right to ask me to show them that. And I'm happy to do it.
So I guess to the second part of this question is some have even looked into your history of asking for financial help and have concluded that you are a grifter. In other words, someone who uses deception to get money from others. They use examples such as the frequency in which you have asked for financial help in the past, you're bringing up faith in those conversations, claims that without assistance, you couldn't do content creation, as well as past automobile ownership frequently changing to show how you are quote unquote grifting your audience. What would you say to those who believe you are a grifter?
Show me the proof. Don't look at the circumstances. It's very easy to look at all of the circumstances like you just listed and assume and fill in the gaps. The reality is, it's a stretch. It didn't happen. I'm going to outright say it. Not a grifter. It's not what I do. There are people who abuse faith, especially Christianity, to get money. I'm very familiar with that. Your Joel Osteen is a very prominent figure who is a multi-millionaire, has many private jets, and there's others even that were quoted from the pulpit saying, "If I don't get this new private jet, I'm not going to be able to make it to next month." It's like your other one's still running, first of all. Second of all, that's really weird for you to talk about from behind the pulpit. So I understand that people see the circumstances. I'm okay with people going, geez, that doesn't add up. But instead of asking, like you are, which I appreciate, they're assuming. They assume and fill in the gaps and never bother to reach out. And that in and of itself is a whole societal issue we can get into for the rest of the time we're talking. We won't, because that's not respectful to you, but it is a very big problem. So to answer the question very directly, I'm not a grifter, certainly not a grifter. The frequent car changes is a very interesting accusation. I would be very curious to see which ones they're referring to, because every single car purchase I have made in the last 5 years, there was a very strategic reason for it. They were never upgrades. It was never like I went, I need a nicer car and I have all this money. I'm going to go get this nicer car. It was never that. Not at any point. And they're welcome to try and point that out, but it's never going to happen because it wasn't there. So the car thing is easy to axe. When I bring up my faith, I don't use my faith as a way to manipulate people into sending money. There are times where I talk about my faith in Christ, knowing He's going to provide for me in the context of finances, because usually when I'm doing that, I'm dealing with my own issues where I'm going, man, what if I don't? Like, what if nothing happens? And I, I think that that's kind of the big thing. And it's like, I don't want to I don't want to use my faith as the reason that people want to support, but I want them to know that I firmly believe that even if I don't receive a dime from it, then I know God's going to provide. So people will see that, take it out of its context, and say, "Oh, he's using his faith." No, I'm really not. I'm just saying that's how I feel. You guys can think what you want. And then so far as it was faith, the car changes. There were two other things you specifically pointed to, and I want to make sure I address them. What were the other two things?
There was frequency in which you've asked. Uh,
Mhm.
and I guess bring up faith in conversations. You couldn't do content creation and automobile. Those were the four.
That was the yeah. They couldn't do the content creation. Any creator who tells you they can do content creation without their community supporting them is lying to you. Even at a certain scale, ad revenue, particularly for gaming creators, is abysmal. It is not good. You can be the most PG Minecraft streamer ever, and you're still not making much from ad revenue. Even your Captain Sparkles of the world, I can promise you the majority of his revenue is not from ad revenue. It is from his support of his community, whether that's through direct support, buying stuff from affiliate links, or whatever the case may be. Anybody who tells you that it's ad revenue only, if they tell you that and can prove it, they are a one off and they are the exception, not the rule. So that's a big one. So when I said things like I really appreciate the support, I couldn't do this without you guys. It is a genuine, heartfelt thank you. It's not a guilting more people into giving me money thing. It's a hey, I'm really thankful, and I couldn't do this without you. I really appreciate it. The other part of it, and as far as the frequency of doing it, I'd be curious to see what people say is frequent. The the frequency that I'm aware of is I did it for a full week most recently. That was to try and push out of debt. We had a car loan, which is now paid off largely because of the community. And the I think the time before that was probably right around the time I got into a car accident. It would have been around December, January, I think. So every 6 months, if that's frequent to people, I could understand why they'd see it that way. But it was truly a very unfortunate set of circumstances hitting all at once. We got in the car accident. That set off a whole chain reaction of things because of some other changes I had made in my life at that time. And I was very transparent about that with my community at the time. Hey, got in a car accident. I was driving rideshare in that car. That was how we were paying the bills. And I either go get another 9 to 5 or I can try and make this work. So I talked to my wife and she's like, let's give it 3 months, see what happens. It didn't work. So I went and got a job. That's okay. When neither of us, again, failure, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with failing. It's what you learn from your failures that matters. So it didn't work. We didn't pay a bill late and we were okay. Life is good. Everybody was fed. The kids are taken care of. What more do we ask for? Right? We're good. So yeah, I think that those accusations, probably the reason I haven't really even responded to them, even in that video, was because I'd heard them, but they were so infrequent, number one. And number two, they were so outlandish that I just kind of ignored them, to be honest. So
Yeah, see, the grifting thing, I'm not necessarily, I don't want to say I'm for it or against it. I'm probably more on the fence here. Like the content creation thing, I think what they used, I don't want to say out of context, but the understanding was like, I think It might have been whenever you had your setup in a different person's house and then you couldn't go to it. I think maybe there was a tweet or something. I did a lot of research. I think that could have been the context. So that's why I'm kind of on the fence with it. But the problem I have, and this wasn't listed in the questions I gave you, so I hope you're okay to answer. Um, I The Overwatch stuff, the people are just trashing on you because they think it's funny. The internet's the internet. I do think there are things that are genuinely worth criticism. Grifting, I can understand the point of view, but I'm not necessarily taking that angle. I'll just be honest. And again, I've already told you that my video is likely going to be negatively skewed. One of the biggest things is the outrageous generosity for me, because it kind of could tie into the grifting allegation, if you'd want to call it that. But what I think it could be, maybe this is very cynical, and please, like, tell me if I'm wrong. I worry that back then, because you just mentioned ad revenue is trash. That's a fair assessment. But back then, when you made that video, I think it was, I don't know, 2022. You said, hey, half of my revenue from Twitch is going to go into outrageous generosity, and then you use that hashtag multiple times throughout the TikToks, and then you stopped using it at some point. I think you took a break or something, then you stopped using it. This is all fine, right? I'm not necessarily saying that you must have done it, but my issue is that it seems like it could be because you wanted like the social credit that comes with that. Like, I'm gonna be uber positive, and throughout that positivity, later on, cynically, I'm not making this causation here, but it could have led to people be more supportive of you. So, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I can totally see where you're adding that up. Like the idea that if I'm saying, hey, half my Twitch revenue is going to go to outrageous generosity, people are like, oh, I should sub to this guy. And they start spending more money. And then I never do the generosity. I just pocketed money. I can see uh, the math, right? I can, if it's math for metaphorical sense, I can see that. What I would say to that is at that time, and I don't remember when I released that video, and because things have changed so many different times throughout my content creation time, where I've tried to be more full time and then less full time, and that part has been like back and forth in my mind. That's not been anybody's fault. That's on me. But I'm wondering if that was during a time where I worked at a financial institution well, actually, I worked at two of them, and I could see a world where during those times that I was like, oh, I could just do that because I don't really have the need for the revenue. And then when that shifted and we had a need for the revenue, I stopped using the hashtag, stopped talking about it, but never really made an outright announcement to change anything, because even when I was doing that, if we could find the date and if you send it to me, if you can,
I actually have it. I actually have it.
oh, okay,
The
yeah, hit me
Yeah,
with it.
yeah, it
What's
was
the
in my
date?
notes. Sorry, I had to look. It
No, you're fine.
was April
Yeah.
22nd, 2022.
22. Let me do the math in my head here, because so I got married to my wife that year, later that year. I wasn't married yet. Yeah, I was working at a financial institution at the time. There was a local credit union. This is very honest, like super transparent, because I believe more transparency bears honesty. There was a local credit union. I don't even mind sharing who it was, to be honest with you, because I don't work there anymore. I was working for them for a while, and I, at the time, had just gotten a promotion and no longer needed the extra, like maybe it was $100 a month I was making at the time total, if that. I don't know if it was even that. And I was like, oh, I could take like half of that and maybe just be outrageously generous with it. And then fast forward towards the end of that year. Now I don't know how long I used that hashtag for, but we ended up, my wife and I, kind of throughout that summer, had started talking about getting married, and I knew, because we'd been dating for a minute, she had a son before we were married. She had a son with another man. That's a whole story. But I knew that entering into the marriage, I was going to need a little bit more savings built up, because I was also not, I wasn't just marrying my wife. I was also I was becoming a father in the same stroke, like the same moment. It was all at once. And I wanted to make sure I was prepared. So I know that there was a certain point, and I don't know when that point was. I couldn't point to a date, right? But I started realizing that and went, okay, I actually probably should pocket as many dollars as I can right now. And I can tell you that if I went back to that date and showed before and after, the time that I was using the hashtag, after that, I could show you kind of before and after. I can almost guarantee you there wasn't even a 10 or 20% increase in revenue. It never really was utilized in a sense, and that wasn't my goal. It was just saying, hey, generally speaking, I think this is something I want to do going forward. It wasn't to spike more. It was to say this is something that I want to do with it, and I just wanted ideas. So that fell apart because I then needed the money regularly. Now, up until that point, trying to remember if I ever got a payout while I was still using the outrageous generosity tag. Because, for those that are unfamiliar, you may be familiar yourself, Gag, I don't know. But most platforms, Twitch and YouTube included, let's say I make money in the month of June. You don't get paid until the middle of the month of July for whatever you made in June. So I would be willing to say that I don't remember distinctly doing the math, but I'm willing to bet I didn't even get a payout. At the time, the payout threshold on Twitch, I want to say at the time it was $100. I could be wrong on that, but whatever the threshold was, I wasn't hitting it every month. So because I did, I'm willing to bet that if we went back and looked, that I didn't hit the threshold, and that I just went, okay, we did it for this length of time. It's no big deal. I just moved on. But I will also say this: I'm actually happy to look at that after we're off our call and conversation today, Gag. This is like full accountability. I'm willing to look back at that. And if I find that I'm just dead wrong and I made an error in judgment and like continued to, let's say that I made a payout that month as an example, right? And okay, well, I needed the money. No, that's on me and I got to own that shit. And I'm happy to go back now and double it. So whatever it was, if it was $100, half of that would have been, the Twitch revenue, half of that would have been 50. I'm happy to make $100 charitable donation wherever now and make that public because I said it publicly. Because my goal is never to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. We even talked about it before he brought up the question. Because I don't want to be that guy. That's never something I want to be painted as. I don't want to give anybody the idea that that's something I want to do. And if that's how it comes across, and especially if I look back then and I did in fact get a payout in that, again, corresponding to that timeline we just talked about, where if it was, did you say it was April of 22 that I posted that? Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So if April and potentially March, because again, if I didn't hit the threshold in March, it would have added into whatever April had. So again, I'm willing to take full accountability, go through the whole bit. If I got a payout in the month of May, whatever that payout was from Twitch, I'm happy to take that in half and double it. So basically, whatever, easy math, whatever the payout was, and do a charitable donation now, because that's an error in judgment and maybe even just a genuine space cadet moment. Because you can ask anybody who knows me personally, and I genuinely don't remember crap. I have two people right now that are taking care of I have a guy who's doing my thumbnails on my YouTube channel and a guy who's editing for me. And I have a reminder in my calendar now, but before I did that, when I first hired them on, I wasn't used to paying anybody, right? I mean, I was doing everything myself. So I didn't think about the fact that, yeah, they're working, you should pay them. So it was like a duh moment. And one of them reached out to me, and it had only been a week. Like, it wasn't like I was waiting for weeks on end. And they were like, hey, when were we going to do the payout? Neither of us really talked about that. And I went, oh, right now, because I forgot. Sorry. And then I put a calendar reminder in my phone, and that was that. So anybody who knows me at all knows that I'm incredibly forgetful of really important things. Maybe it's an undiagnosed ADHD. I don't know. But whatever it is, I'm horribly forgetful. So it's very possible that's what it is. But I am happy to look at that, like I said, and I'll send you the screenshots. I think there may even be a way to look without having to look at like the month by month. I should be able to look at my payouts over that time and see when the most recent payout was following that video. And then we can have that conversation, because if it was in like freaking July or August, I probably just honestly didn't even think about it and just moved on because there was so much going on at that point. We were starting to gear up for a wedding later that year. There was so much going on. I wasn't even thinking about it. So I hope that makes sense.
All right, Future Gag here. I just wanted to put in the analytics that Gamin4Hope actually sent me from his Twitch that showed his earnings. He made $90.31, and this time span was from April 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2022. This is the amount, the $90.31 that he is now vowing to send to charity, and he will show the receipt of that. I personally am not going to, dog on him to, show receipts and stuff like that. I think it's more of an accountability issue between, him and the general audience. I am bringing this claim up to him, and it is true that, and he even admits to this, that he did not do any outrageous generosity, at least in that time span that he used that hashtag. He claims earlier on that he did do outrageous generosity, but I, I guess you can, discern what those two maybe contradicting statements mean in the grand scheme of things. But realistically, I just want to put this in here to, I guess, on my end, hold him accountable in this video. Okay, going back to the interview. I hope you're enjoying. Yeah, it does. Thank you for answering that. Again, that's probably one of the biggest criticisms I have. I think it's probably 3 or 4 major ones that I have. Again, a lot of it, like the internet has of you, is they're just messing with you, right? But I think there are some things that do require some explanation, and I'm glad that you are willing to answer that, and I very much appreciate it.
Yeah,
So
100%.
so
This is
yeah, yeah,
this is may I take a quick side note, Gag? Is that okay
absolutely,
on this topic?
absolutely.
This is part of what I think people need to understand is exactly what you're doing right now. Now, not everybody, including myself, has time to sit. I mean, even you and I had to figure out a time to make this work, right? But having these conversations and even just reaching out, particularly to smaller creators, like at the time when all this controversy started, like I said, I was streaming for like 30 people. That's a lot of people for a lot of people, and I consider that to be a lot of people. I mean, that's the size of an average American classroom. It's a pretty large amount of people. But my chat doesn't move so fast that I wouldn't see a question. So if someone had said, "Hey, I saw this," I would say to them, and this is serious, I've had people ask me about my faith, and I either answer the question if it's a general question, right? Do you believe in Christianity? Yes. Easy answer, right? But if someone says, "So do you believe that the LGBTQIA plus community is X because of your faith?" I don't answer that on stream because there's too much nuance and way too many people can misperceive what you're saying. So I invite that person to have an offline conversation where it's just a one-on-one, and I tell them they're welcome to record it. I don't have anything to hide. It just makes it to where the context is a one-on-one conversation where they're getting the additional clarification they need, and we are not bogged down by many different eyes looking at us. It removes ego, it removes all of the crap that you normally have in those contexts. So I do think that I really want to encourage, and you can choose to put this in your video or not. It's your video, like I told you earlier. But I really want to encourage people to understand this, what you and I are doing right now, Gag. This is what will solve 90% of the world's problems, is having an actual conversation. Now, I'm not trying to claim that my controversies are the world's problems. That's not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying that this problem is much more deep rooted than what I'm dealing with. This is a global issue where we aren't willing to have a conversation and learn from each other and share information. We just want to assume what we want to assume and move on with our lives. And that is, it creates such a toxic culture. I don't think anybody really wants that, if we're being honest with each other. So yeah, I'm always willing to answer these kinds of questions. It may not always be on stream, and now it's even harder to answer on stream because I may just miss the question altogether. But people will send me Discord messages, Instagram DMs, Twitter DMs. I try to check even the hidden ones every once in a while, usually once every couple of days. And if there's a question in there, I've had at least 2 conversations I can think of off the top of my head where people have said, "Hey, I saw this about you and I wanted to know your thoughts." And I was like, "Hey, you got 15 minutes? I can answer that. Can I call you?" Even if it's through Discord, even if it's through Instagram, please record it if you feel more comfortable. And I've had conversations with people because I'm that passionate about this. This is such a big deal. So thank you. I know you were thankful for me answering the question, but I am genuinely thankful for you asking it. It's not just me going, "No, no, thank you for thanking me for thanking you." It's a genuine, "No, I appreciate this. This means more to me than I could ever express." So
That's awesome. And again, I am thankful because again, my channel has like 340 subscribers, way smaller. I'm a total
sure.
nobody. I reached out on Twitter. I think you missed it. Then I emailed
I
you,
probably did, yeah.
and you answered, and I was pleasantly surprised. I thought maybe you were gonna ghost me, but you didn't. And again, I'm very appreciative because again, I'm gonna make the video no matter what. But I think a lot of these things not only help me understand better, but also will help an audience understand better. Because again, like
Absolutely.
I'm not the only person who's made videos on you. Obviously, there's like the apply, yeah, but you know that was more of like a VOD review. That has really the
Yeah.
criticisms for the
It
game,
had
not
less
really
to do with
overall.
my criticisms outside of the game. Yeah, he definitely roasted my gameplay, rightfully so. But it was, yeah. I mean, he wrecked me. Which, I mean, honestly, fair. My Doomfist gameplay is abysmal. I don't blame him at all. But like, and my attitude was horrible, and that was the part that I took away from it. Was like, damn, I need to fix that, and I have since then. Like, I was like, I gotta own that. I don't know where this went, but I had that attitude of who cares about your teammates, just focus on you. And then somewhere that changed, and I've got to fix that. So yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And yeah, size of, man, I won't go on that rant. I'll say this a very, very short and simple statement because I think it's important to address, but I will not go on to a rant, I promise. Size of creator doesn't matter. The idea of what they want to create is what matters to me. If someone reaches out to me and says, I've got a brand new channel, but I want to create this video, and here's the idea, and if you wouldn't mind just being a part of it, I'd really appreciate that. There's a guy named, I think it's Sneeb. Um, he made a video and he was talking about, I want to say the video was, I'm trying to remember now. Again, the ADD brain. He was talking about, I think, the rise and fall of AAA titles and stuff like that. And um and a couple other videos. He was doing a very like documentary style video, and he had just some questions he wanted to ask. It wasn't controversy or anything. It was just about my Overwatch journey and stuff. And he just like, hey, I'm basically a nobody, but and I'm like, yeah, don't lead with that. Everybody's a nobody until there is somebody. Straight up. I know it sounds like cringy crap you throw on a bumper sticker, but like seriously, no one knew who I was when I started. More people know who I am now. Sometimes it's not for the better, but some more people know. And I still don't let that go to my head because it's, if I stop serving them good content, why would they watch? So if you serve your audience good content, it doesn't matter if you have 300 or 400 subs on YouTube. If your content is serving an audience to the very best of your ability, and you're learning from every video and you're learning from everything you create, you become somebody pretty quick because people notice when you're trying to put serious effort into your content. That's the end of my speech. Thank you for attending my TED Talk.
No, I think that's good insight. All right, so I have primarily just four more questions. Some of them I have follow ups,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
guess
fire away.
some of the sentiment I see uh, stems around you being potentially a lolcow. So my question is, some people look at you as someone who has the makings to be a lolcow. I don't know if you know what those are, but they say it. What would you say to that claim?
To be completely transparent with you, when you sent me that question, I was like, "What the hell is a lolcow? Am I old now? What is that?" I had to Google it. I'm not joking. I had to Google it. I'm like, "What is this? What do I even?" So, from what I've understood of a lolcow, basically someone that you can is just making it so easy for you to make fun of them that you can milk them for content. Um, I'm sure there's more to it than that, but for simplicity's sake, that's what I've understood. If all you can do is poke fun at somebody else for the cornerstone of your content, you're not a content creator. That's it. You're creating something, but it's not content. Um, People can, and this kind of goes back to, there's a book, and I've referenced this a lot in the last few streams. The book is literally titled "The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck," and I love the title. It gave me so much of an intrigue. And one of the things it talks about is you have a certain amount of fucks that you're going to be able to give in your life. You have to decide what to spend those on. I choose not to spend those on what other people think about me because you can't change what other people think about you. You can't, well, I mean, you can, but that's not worth doing. There's also a person named, well, most people know who he is. It's Tom Holland. It's the kid who played Spider-Man in the most recent Spider-Man stuff. Um, he said, if you have a problem with me, text me. If you don't have my number, you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me. And I think that the people who are using me for laughs and content, they're welcome to do it. I just don't care.
All right, all right. A major criticism I have of your content and what you post on social media is that you include photos, videos, and personally identifying information of your family members. Why do you post so much regarding your family? And do you see why posting so much can be an issue?
Let me ask you, because you mentioned the personal identifying information. I know I share photos of my kids, and I've talked about birthdays and stuff and their names, like their first names and whatnot. But what what specifically, like, personal identifying information? Can you give me an example? Because I'm not sure I
Yes.
understand what you're asking.
Okay, so probably one of my biggest positions about things on the internet is, especially with parents. This isn't the first time I've necessarily, I don't want to say gone after, but made a video on someone who was a parent. They posted their child's name, which just alone I think is not something parents should do, but made content off of them. I also disagree with that sentiment. Obviously, you can have a different opinion. We don't have to debate, right? But
No,
the
no, I know that's what you're
specifics
looking for. Yeah.
the specifics of it is okay. Again, I did basic research on you. I'm not trying to sound like a creepy stalker. I
No, it's part of these videos.
yeah yeah. I know. Again, please, it's gonna sound creepy. I know where you live. I know the city where you live. I didn't have to like look up like crazy shit about you. I didn't have to go on like a website to find it. Um, your TikTok. There's a TikTok of you showing the weather where you live. There are posts on your Twitter that have I think it was your first biological son or daughter. I don't know the sex, but their full name, first, middle, and last, and obviously post it on their birthday. So I can find out just without doing any more research or digging. I know the birthday and the full legal name. Obviously, I know people can deduce your wife's legal name but she's a part of your content, so I'm not even. That's like people are kind of
He's an
targeting that
adult.
too.
That's less of your concern, I
Yeah,
think, right
right.
now.
Yeah. You've made videos of your son and with your stepson. I guess I should make that specific.
Oh, sure.
Um, one, it's such a minor clip, like very, very brief clip of it. I'm not even gonna feature it in the video, but it does exist. In one of your days to becoming, a competitor, one of the 300. I think it was maybe towards the beginning because that's when you would feature your stepson. There's a part of it
Right.
where
Quite a bit.
he just woke up. You used to do. Oh, I woke up my son today. Then I did this, and then that. Then I played. Right. One of them,
Yeah, it was like a yeah.
you just woke him up, and it seemed like he was crying because you just woke him up. Right. Kids cry all the time. He was probably moody from
Oh,
waking
yeah.
up. But the thing is like you included that. To be fair, it was like a brief, so brief that like I don't even again know if I'm going to even include it. Well, I'm not going to show it, but I'm just saying like I wouldn't include the details.
Right, yeah, I know what you're saying.
But a sort of video of him crying, a couple frames, all of this together, I do not think is appropriate. And that's kind of what I'm saying about the personally identifying information. I know what your children look like. I don't think I should be able to find it. Um, I I can find out the birthdays of your children because you post them. Also, another thing that other people have pointed out, you also, and we talked about this briefly in the beginning of our call. I don't think I'd include that either, but where we introduced ourselves, you go by your full, not your full, but your legal name, your first and
Mhm.
last, which in of itself is also an issue. Someone like me would say. So I guess that's where I'm saying the personally identifying information. It's very easy to deduce it, but also you post about it frequently. Not frequently, but on birthdays and things like that.
It's there.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I guess to reiterate my question, just because I went on a rant too, why do you post so much regarding your family, and do you see why posting so much can be an issue?
I can see where people have a concern about it, and actually, my wife and I have had a pretty serious conversation about it in the last, I'd say, 6 to 12 months. And you'll notice there's significantly less of that now. Especially from the research that you did, even in just the vertical videos, right, that you watched,
I will
there's a
100%
significant
agree.
difference.
Yes.
And it's because there was okay, that was stupid. Let's stop doing that. Plain and simple. Now, I'll admit the posting the full legal name, it was probably my middle daughter. Well, my middle kid, she's my only daughter. um, but that was an oversight, because I can guarantee you what happened is, in the midst of being up really late, labor and all that stuff that happens when you have a baby, you're up for a while. Way worse on the person who's giving birth by a landslide, but the other person who's there to support, yeah, you're not sleeping much either. And I can guarantee you, I went to post to my personal Facebook to like my friends and family, and just copied and pasted the post, because I don't mind sharing. I don't mind sharing some things with the internet. What I've learned is that there are things you don't share with the internet, right? Like, there were things I knew you shouldn't from the beginning. Full legal name, yeah, that was an oversight, 100%. Sharing it on the birthday, probably not the best idea, but that's a gray area. I think without the legal name, it wouldn't have been as big of an issue. The city and state that I live in, a lot of people think it's not. You don't need to tell
Oh,
me where you think it is.
okay, okay. I will say that was what I
Yeah,
pinpointed.
that's where you
Okay.
thought it was.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
I
Okay.
used the closest large city to me.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I
Yep.
was wrong on
And that
that,
was and
but
that was
yeah.
it. And the reason I No, it's okay. That's okay. It's really okay. A lot of people thought that. Um, and unfortunately, um, the reason I did that was actually, and I stopped doing that, and that was part of that same conversation with my bride, where she was like, "We probably need to stop doing that, even though it's not the actual city we live in. If people figure it out, start doing maps." And then we got this doxing situation on March 31st. That guy's facing felony charges, by the way. Um, he uh, he figured out the small city we live in. Couldn't tell you how he figured that out. That was probably from one of those websites you referenced, but he figured it out in tandem with, oh, he says he lives. That's probably his. And so we, especially with that, we said, all right, no more. We're done. And I stopped posting with the location tagged. The amount of effort it would have taken to go back through and find every post I made that I tagged the location was insurmountable, so I never bothered. But I stopped doing it. And the reason for that is because it creates a safety concern. So, um, as far as posting, I think there's levels to it, and that's what I'm learning. I'm admitting this completely. Like, I'm still learning it. This is not something I pretend to know. There are levels to it. The worst case scenario is like kind of what you pointed out, and I'm going to try and go find that so that it's not there anymore, because while people can recover stuff on the internet, it makes it a lot harder for the average person to go find it. I know when my two youngest people were born, and I can go find that date on the timeline and go remove that post, because I'm too cheap to pay for X premium, so I can't just go edit it. But but I think that sharing things in my personal life is not necessarily the worst thing. I think it creates a more relatable person. Again, it kind of goes back to the brand versus person. And you know, when we go through real life things, I think too many streamers are afraid to admit they went through a real life thing, right? Maybe they had a loss in the family. Most people are willing to say, we had a death in the family, I'm out for a few days. But for some reason, when it comes to exciting things, we don't want to share it, right? Like, hey, we had a baby. Now, maybe not posting it the day of or with their birth date. Sure, I'm all open for the idea that legal name. Like, I'm with you there. That was a stupid decision. I just don't even know that I realized I made it. But legal names, no, probably not. Leave like first name, sure, yeah, first name. A couple days after, later, like, hey, if you within the last week we've had a child. Here's the picture of the child, and thank you guys for bearing with me while I get back to a new rhythm. That kind of post I think is appropriate. But there's balance and nuance. I rarely post with my kids anymore. Even like before, I used to post, especially I think you referenced my stepson quite a bit. I only refer to him that way, by the way, when we're in the context of these kinds of conversations. That just helps people
Oh
identify it.
yeah, that's why
He's
I
my
did it
son.
too. I
Yeah,
didn't mean anything by
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I know you didn't. No, I know you didn't, and I'm totally cool with that. But yeah, he's just as much my son in my mind as either my other two children or my daughter and son. He's no different to me. But like, he and I have a boys' day every week. We just and it's shorter. It's not a day now anymore. It's a few hours, but we just him and I. We go out and do something, or maybe we just watch a movie or whatever. And I used to post those, like, just, hey, we're watching a movie or something for fun. And I think those kinds of things, like, I'm still on the fence about, so I've just stopped until I sort that out. Because I think sometimes posting those things is not a bad thing, but is it really? positively contributing enough that it's worth the potential negatives? And that's the question I'm still wrestling with. And I think ultimately, probably the answer is no. And to be very clear, that it's not worth posting. So I haven't, on the erring of the side of caution kind of thing. This is a fair criticism, and I'm very open to receiving it. And I think that that's one that my bride, and again, I reference her a lot. She's a wonderful woman. She's been amazing. When she brought up that concern, she rarely brings things up that are a concern unless it's a real concern for her. She doesn't just complain. She's really not the complaining type. If she brings something up, I know she's been chewing on it for a minute and it's really a problem for her. So I shut up and listen. And then when she said to me, like, hey, I don't know if we want to keep posting the kids with your day in the life videos. Okay, let's stop doing that then. End of conversation.
Yeah. And
So
again, doing the research, I saw the change. At some point, I think it was in the hundreds. Someone could, I guess, go check if they
probably
really
so.
wanted. But it was sometime early on, again, probably the first like third of it, and then it stopped. And I did notice that. But again, I just really wanted to ask about that because
It's a fair
again,
question. Yeah.
yeah, because that's probably like one of my biggest positions about like things like that on the internet. But that's obviously just me. You know, it's a criticism that you don't even have to care about because you somewhat
Oh no,
disagree
I
a
think
little
it's a
bit.
fair one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to a lesser extent, I think, than a lot of people think. But yeah, I think that there's, absolutely there's two extremes in my mind. There's you can post everything and make your content about them. That's wrong. I don't like the there's stuff where people will make like a couples channel that have kids and they don't feature their kids, whatever. But the couples channel where they feature their kids constantly, I'm like, are you milking your kids for content right now? Like this is weird. I don't like this. I mean, it feels gross. And so I get that extreme is wrong. I think that everybody would agree that extreme is wrong. And maybe not, but I would like to think. The other extreme is never posting anything ever about your family and people barely know. There's some gray areas. I don't think there's an objective right or wrong on that. I just think that that's like a more like gray area. And I think now, whereas before, if you have this kind of spectrum, if you will, and I was more on the let's post everything. I wasn't all the way there, but I was more towards and in the middle. I'm now much more if this is center and this is the other extreme, I'm much closer to that other extreme where it's like, let's post next to nothing. But yeah, like, hey, I'm having a birthday party for the kid and the next day kind of thing. Like, I don't know that I've ever posted on the birthday of my kids' birthdays because I try to be off my freaking phone during their birthdays. I really do. That's a big thing for me. Like when or even just like during boys' time with my son, like and he points it out. Where's your phone? Well, it's in our room. I don't need it right now. I'm hanging out with you. And you're more important to me than anything going on my phone right now. It does not matter. And and that means something to them. He's I won't say his age. He's old enough now to recognize, right? That when my phone isn't in my hand, that he has my undivided attention. And that means something. So to that end, um, that I think is kind of where I lie on that. So I'll stop ranting about it now, though.
Right. Yeah, thank you for answering. Again, one of my pillars of criticism. And I guess the final one that we can discuss here is myself and many others believe that you frequently responding to what seems to be obvious trolls and detractors are fanning the flames and actually creating an environment where they continue to lie, spread rumors, cut things out of context, and overall just jab at you because they know it will get a response. Do you think that this is true?
No, because there's more to it than that. Is the statement itself true that they're going to get more fuel for their flame? Sure. But the reality is, anybody who's following them and listening to them are just as much losers as they are for posting it. Flat out. And I stand on that. If people want to post and take things out of context and remove clips and make new content from it, I've seen a lot of that lately. They have no life if they can be on the internet for that length of time and build a following from it. And the followers that follow that kind of crap, they don't have much of a better quality of life either. These are people who are miserably depressed, and I'm not speaking down to them here. This is just an objective statement. They aren't happy with their lives. David Goggins put it very well when he said, "You will never be shit on by anybody who is doing better than you." So when people are constantly trying to drag me through the mud, especially when it's out of context, I understand the in context stuff, things that I've addressed, and we'll get to the other part of this answer in a minute that will help as well. But I do not, as people who want to, take a couple of clips and combine them and make it look like something that it's absolutely not. I'm never going to be able to stop that. So the reason that I do this, and this is the other part of the answer and why I was so clear on the emphatic no, this is not just that negative. I think I've made 3 long form videos at this point on YouTube, and I know I've made a handful on vertical platforms as well. And you are right, by the way. I think you referenced earlier that I probably post the same things on YouTube. I actually post the same video to Instagram Reels, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts, just like most other creators. Like, that's pretty normal stuff. When I was writing my scripts and stuff and doing the day X, which is what I always called the journey videos, I actually wrote some. There were some that I wrote a shorter script for YouTube and Instagram because they performed better. Same story, shorter script. TikTok needs a longer than 60-second video to be monetized. The other 2 platforms don't. So I made a shorter content piece because they did better shorter, and they made no difference in the revenue. So clearly people wanted that, and that made sense. So besides that, it's all the same content. The long form ones, because I know I've made 2 that have basically the same thumbnail. It's modified ever so slightly. And that's the most recent one that most people are at this point familiar with if they're watching this video. The reason I do those is very clear in my mind. I know that when I make those videos, there's still going to be people who aren't satisfied. Like, even with the most recent one, people were like, well, you didn't touch on your political tweets. No, because someone called me on my political tweeting on my Gamin4Hope profile, and I removed those tweets because me retweeting a political comedy bit or something that was funny, people got offended by it, and they don't tune into me for political crap. So I don't post it. That was a learning moment. We learned from it. We removed the posts. We move on with our lives, right? So I didn't even acknowledge those. And people who kept feeding into that, I just hid them from the channel, which I also got criticism for, but it's just a circular thing at that point. My point is, you're never going to please everybody. But the loudest people are often the minority in every situation. And that's all sides of any argument. This isn't a one-sided issue. When things go sideways, I won't use any specific examples because, again, the whole point is to avoid triggering people. But when any side, you know what? No, I'm going to pick on Republicans because people have just pegged me as a Republican, which is wild. But people will peg me that way. And there were Republican issues. There were things that Republicans did that I'm like, what are we doing? What? Why are we doing that? But they were the loudest, so they got the most attention, right? I believe this is not just true of this conversation, but in most. We're going to use that spectrum conversation again, right? I love the visuals. I'm big on visuals. You have 100% of people represented between my 2 hands. And on each extreme, there's about 5 to 10% that are the loudest. If we say it's 10%, the maximum, which I truly believe is the maximum, it's probably closer to that 5, but let's say it's 10. That means that you take 20% from 100, quick math says that's 80% of people remaining in the middle. And some of them may lean more one direction or the other, or they may be pretty dead center. And I would say the majority of people are going to be dead center of most arguments. Those were the people that I made those videos for, because those people don't comment. They don't publicly chat. They don't really do anything except just kind of watch. It's kind of creepy when you think about it. They don't ever say anything. They're just watching you. But really, they've got stuff going on. Maybe they're working while they've got you on. Maybe they've got other stuff going on. So those folks see the influx of all of the crap posted on social media, and they go, well, I've only watched a handful of his pieces of content. I've never watched his live streams or anything, but maybe they're right. Maybe he is. I mean, there's been so many YouTube controversies that have turned out to be true. It's horrible. So in light of all of those things piling up against me, as they pile up and as I see them more commonly in my comments and in my chat on live streams, I address them in a video, mostly as a resource for me. So that when they come up, if there is someone who is truly asking the question, I can link to them, the timestamp in the video, and say, I answered it here. Please feel free to go watch if you're curious about the answer. I post it publicly instead of just as an unlisted video to literally use as a resource, because there are people who will never ask. But if the video is available for them to go find out, they'll go find out, and they'll never say a word. The silent majority is who I make those videos for. It is not the fringe 5 to 10% who either agree with me completely, perceivably, or completely disagree with me. It is for the remaining majority in the middle that I make those videos, and I stand by making.
Right. And I guess a follow up to that is, how do you plan on engaging with those people moving forward? That very loud minority.
When that very loud minority becomes so loud that I need to address it, I'll address it like I have, making a video. But I don't intend for my content to become all that. So if it becomes so much that because I post maybe one long form a week now, and I no longer script any of my verticals. They're all stream clips because I've run out of time to write scripts and stuff with my 9 to 5. If it becomes a thing where I have to post one a month, which I doubt, because they're eventually going to run out of crap to talk about. I mean, seriously, there's only so many things that are so controversial everybody would hate me for it. If it continues and I start to get to a place where it's too frequent, I think there's a point where you have to just go, well, they are who they are, and you move on. But if you look at those 3 videos, the frequency is only increased in the last, I would say, I've probably posted all 3 of those videos in the last year, which means it's been once, if you average it, I'm sure it's not literally this, but if you average that, that's once every 4 months. And to me, when you post essentially in 4 months on my current pace, I would have posted 16 videos. 1 out of 16 videos may seem frequent in a lot of ways, but when it helps me on my live streams, when people are like, "Oh my gosh, I heard X, Y, and Z thing about you," I'm like, "Yeah," and I addressed it in this video. If you want to go watch it, here's a specific timestamp, so you don't have to watch the whole thing. You can just get your question answered. I have had people come back, excuse me, during my live streams and said, "Hey, I went and watched that. You were absolutely right. That answered all my questions. I appreciate it." And then they sub to the channel, or then they follow my stream. And those people are, I'm so serious. That's how I will continue to address it, because the majority of people appreciate the transparency. And yes, I know that there is a negative that comes with posting those 2. I'm so aware of it. I'm so aware of it. But I believe personally the positives outweigh the negatives by a landslide.
I have one final question. In 2023, you asked your audience for financial help and even showed screenshots and thanked people for supporting you and your wife fighting a custody dispute that was filed by your stepson's biological father. In the content surrounding it, you made claims that he wasn't particularly fit to be in your stepson's life, and that it was actually the biological father who broke the unofficial custody contract first, which then led to the dispute. My question is, do you think it's appropriate to air out your stepson's biological father's dirty laundry like that, even if it is true?
No, absolutely not. This is an error in judgment that I made during that time that I still regret to this day. And I will tell you flat out, um, I have taken accountability for that with him. He and I are good now. We had a direct conversation about it. It was actually fairly recent. I won't go into that too much, but I will say that we had a very specific conversation about that, where he called me on it, and I said, "You know what? You're absolutely right. Regardless of me being right or wrong, it wasn't okay to post it. I apologize for that. I don't know how to go back and kill it all, but if you find something you want me to remove from the internet, you let me know." And he has not said to remove anything yet, but the moment he says, "Hey, I found this," even if it's a live stream bot, "I found this live stream bot," and that just gets deleted, it's nuked, it's gone. It's not a hesitation for me. The the thing I will say is, during that time, I was hurt and angry. That doesn't justify my behavior. I'm not trying to justify it. It's by no means. It was not okay. I am saying that out of my hurt and out of my anger, those things came out. Again, not appropriate, but that is where it came from. And yeah, I still regret it heavily to this day, because it took an insurmountable amount of time to repair that damage. Rightfully so, I screwed up. But it's something that I regret deeply. Not raising the money for it, we did need to find a lawyer. I think that was appropriate. We all agree, both parties agree that the custody proceedings and a court paperwork situation that was needed because we had an unofficial document at the time. Having an official thing that we have to adhere to by a court of law was the best thing for all of us, so that emotions aside, we follow that, right? Um, so it was, the financial thing was a true need at the time, raising the money for it and all that stuff. That was all so genuine. And the people that reached out that sent the money for that, they all received a receipt. And if you're, if you happen to be watching this and you're like, I didn't receive a receipt, ask. Like, hey, I sent you money. I didn't see that. I'll send you the receipt for the lawyer today. And now am I going to post it online? No. But I'm happy to, for those that sent money, because I'm big on accountability, they absolutely are owed the hey, here's the receipt for it. Thank you for your help. But none of them asked because they all trusted that I was what I was doing with it. And yeah, so to answer your question very directly, gosh, no, it's one of my deepest regrets of abusing my platform to air that out. It was so stupid. And um, yeah, the moment that he points to a piece of content that I need to remove, it's gone. It will never exist on the internet again.
Okay. With that, those are all the questions I have. Do you have any for me, or do you have any like final closing thoughts that you want to give?
Uh, I think this is my final closing thought because it's the most important thing to me out of all of this. Every single thing that Gag here has asked me and we've talked about, I want you guys to notice that he asked. It's that simple. Having a dialogue and having a conversation about anything that you disagree with people on is such a big deal. And by the way, this doesn't even just go for content creators. This is a life thing. Some of your friends, maybe they hurt you in some way. If you never tell them, if you never talk to them about it and you build up bitterness, I've heard it said that bitterness is the poison that you consume expecting someone else to die. And the only person you are hurting by assuming negative things about other people is you. Those other people probably don't even know you think about it. For me as a creator, it's a little different because people post about it and I find out. Sometimes, though, I don't even worry about it. Most of the time, I don't even worry about it. It's just kind of like, all right, they think what they think. I don't care. But it's just hurting you. It's negative thoughts polluting your mind. And it all could have been avoided with a simple conversation. And I cannot stress enough how much a conversation can go a long way to solving whatever problem you have with somebody. That's my piece. That's what I got.
All right. Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you again for coming on. I appreciate it. This has
Absolutely.
been
Yep.
illuminating for me, and I'm sure it's been illuminating for plenty of other people. Obviously, I'll include your socials in the description, things of that nature.
Sure.
Big thank you.